Emily Carter sat in a dimly lit conference room, the scent of ink and polished wood heavy in the air. Across from her sat Noah Blake, calm, distant, and unreadable. Between them lay a neatly printed marriage contract, the kind that reduced feelings to signatures and timelines. Emily's pen trembled slightly as she signed her name, knowing this was her only chance to save her family's failing company. Noah followed, his face expressionless, signing for reasons just as desperate. Two strangers bound by paper, not passion, a business arrangement dressed up as marriage. To outsiders, it might have seemed like a calculated alliance. Two professionals making a smart mutual decision. But beneath the surface, both hearts were quietly breaking. Emily, still haunted by past betrayal, had long stopped believing in love. Noah, scarred by his father's cold expectations, viewed emotions as distractions from success. Their deal was simple. 2 years, no attachments, no emotions. Yet, as their pens touched the paper, a silent unease settled between them, a feeling neither could name but both felt deeply. Their wedding was quiet, mechanical, almost clinical. No vows of love, no soft music, just the echo of footsteps in an empty hall and the flash of a camera marking the legal union. As Emily slipped the ring onto her finger, a chill ran through her. This wasn't the romantic beginning she had once imagined. It was a transaction. Yet somewhere deep inside, a fragile whisper rose in her heart. This wasn't a love story. It was survival, or so I thought. And with that, their story began. One destined to blur the line between contract and connection. Life in their luxurious apartment is silent, predictable, and painfully polite. Every morning, Noah leaves for work in his tailored suit, barely acknowledging Emily as she quietly sips her coffee. At night, he returns to a spotless home where dinner waits, not out of affection but obligation. Emily moves carefully, as if every word could disturb the fragile balance between them. Despite sharing the same space, they live in separate worlds. He buries himself in contracts and late-night calls, while she hides her loneliness behind gentle smiles, convincing herself that survival is better than heartbreak. Emily's kindness comes from hardship. Losing her mother early forced her to grow up fast, becoming the emotional anchor for a father drowning in debt. She learned to give even when it hurt. Love to her was sacrifice. Noah's past, however, taught him the opposite. His ex-fiancee's betrayal turned warmth into weakness in his eyes. He built walls of control and logic to keep pain away, believing emotions were liabilities. So when they agreed on their 3 rules, no emotions, no intimacy, no interference, it wasn't cruelty. It was protection for both of them. But time began to erode the walls they built. Emily's quiet gestures, a warm cup of coffee, a note on his desk, soft jazz in the evening, began to unsettle Noah's rigid world. He told himself it was irritation, yet his eyes lingered longer on her than before. Her presence softened the edges of his solitude, while his rare moments of gentleness made her heart ache in confusion. Their marriage, once purely transactional, started to feel dangerously human. Beneath unspoken rules and silent rooms, something fragile yet undeniable began to take root. The beginning of feeling. The night began with chaos. Noah's father was rushed to the hospital after a sudden stroke, pulling the family together for the first time in years. Amid the sterile lights and anxious murmurs, Emily stood quietly by Noah's side, out of duty, not belonging. Then, through the sliding doors came Lila, elegant, venomous, and now married to Noah's half-brother. Her smile was sharp as glass. In front of everyone, she casually exposed Emily's contract marriage, turning whispered gossip into public humiliation. The room fell silent. Emily's face burned with shame as eyes filled with judgment turned toward her. Lila's words cut deep, painting Emily as a desperate woman who traded dignity for money. What stung more was Noah's silence. He stood there, stone-faced, saying nothing as the accusations piled up. Emily's throat tightened, her heart breaking beneath the weight of his indifference. When they returned home, she held herself together until the kitchen lights dimmed. Then the tears came, quiet but unstoppable. She had agreed to this arrangement knowing love wasn't part of it, but she hadn't expected his silence to hurt this much. For the first time, Emily wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Later that night, as she passed by Noah's study, Emily froze. Through the half-open door, she heard him, his voice low, steady, defending her to his father. She didn't marry me for money. She's done more for this family than anyone realizes. The words hit her like a spark in the dark. Beneath his coldness there was loyalty. Quiet, guarded, real. Her tears slowed as something unfamiliar stirred inside her. Understanding. Maybe Noah wasn't heartless after all. Maybe he was just broken in ways she hadn't seen. That night, everything between them subtly, irreversibly began to change. The rhythm of their days began to change. What once felt like a silent arrangement started to bloom into quiet companionship. Noah began waiting for Emily after work, offering her a ride home without words. She learned how he liked his tea, 2 sugars, no lemon, and left it by his desk during late nights. Their laughter, once rare, now echoed faintly in the apartment halls. But every smile terrified Noah. To him, affection meant danger, the same kind that once shattered his trust. So he built invisible walls around a heart that was slowly, inevitably softening for her. Then tragedy struck. Emily's father and her last living family, Kong, died suddenly, leaving her world in ruins. She stopped smiling, stopped drawing, barely ate. For the first time, Noah saw her not as a contract partner, but as a broken human being clinging to what was left of her life. Without hesitation, he stayed beside her hospital bed. Sleepless nights spent holding her hand as she cried. His presence became her anchor. Through grief, something wordless passed between them, a fragile bond neither dared name. For the first time, their marriage felt heartbreakingly real. But as Emily began to heal, Noah pulled away. The closer he got to her, the more terrified he became of losing control, of needing her the way he once needed someone who betrayed him. He buried himself in case files, stopped looking her in the eyes, and avoided the moments that once brought comfort. Emily felt the distance like a knife. The warmth they built began to fade into cold silence once more. Love was growing between them, undeniable and deep, but Noah's fear was stronger, and this time it wasn't Emily's heart that was breaking. It was his. 2 years slipped by, quiet and bittersweet. The morning of their divorce arrived like a cruel echo of their wedding. The same silence, the same signatures, but heavier hearts. Emily sat across from Noah once more, pen trembling just like the first time. Only now the emptiness wasn't from fear but from love unspoken. She signed the papers without meeting his eyes, afraid one glance would shatter her resolve. Noah's chest ached as he watched her. Something inside him screamed to stop her, to say don't go, but pride, his lifelong armor, kept him frozen in silence. A few days later, the apartment stood hollow, echoing with memories that refused to fade. Noah came home to find her things gone, except for a single sealed envelope on the table. Inside, Emily's handwriting trembled across the page. I loved you long before you noticed me, but I was never brave enough to say it. The words cut deeper than any wound. Every small moment, her laughter, her kindness, her patience, rushed back to him with unbearable clarity. He realized too late that she hadn't been pretending all along. She had truly, completely loved him. Noah ran through the city that night, chasing ghosts. He went to her favorite cafe, her office, the park bench where she once waited for him. But she was already gone. A new job, a new life, in another city far from the pain. Standing in the rain, letter crumpled in his hand, Noah finally understood what love truly meant. It wasn't a transaction or weakness. It was the one thing that made him feel alive. The man who once believed emotions were liabilities now stood alone, realizing that the only thing he couldn't afford to lose was her. Months turned into seasons, and Emily slowly rebuilt herself from the ashes of heartbreak. She poured her pain into her art, turning loneliness into beauty and grief into strength. Her small design studio grew beyond expectations, her name whispered in creative circles with admiration. She no longer waited for love to validate her. She had learned that survival wasn't weakness and solitude could be power. The fragile woman who once clung to a contract now stood on her own terms. For the first time, Emily wasn't living for anyone else's approval. She was living for herself, free, fearless, whole. Noah's world, however, felt hollow despite its perfection. The inheritance, the prestige, the control, none of it quieted the ache of her absence. He finally faced what he had spent years running from, himself. Therapy became his confession booth, each session peeling back the layers of pride and pain he'd built since Lila's betrayal. He learned that love wasn't weakness but courage, the kind he never had when Emily was beside him. Slowly, the cold, disciplined lawyer began to rediscover humanity piece by piece, and for the first time Noah didn't fear his emotions. He honored them. Fate reunited them unexpectedly at an art exhibit months later. One of Emily's designs, a painting titled "The One Who Stayed Brave," hung in the center of the gallery. When their eyes met across the room, the world fell silent. Noah approached quietly, regret and tenderness mingling in his gaze. "I'm sorry I realized too late," he whispered. Emily smiled, her voice soft but steady. "You didn't realize too late. You just weren't ready then." Then she turned and walked away, her head high. And for once, Noah didn't chase her, because he finally understood. True love means letting go. Time passed gently, like rain washing away the last traces of pain. One quiet evening, Emily received a message from Noah. His words were simple, honest, a reflection of the man he had become. "You are the only real thing in my life. I hope you're happy, truly." For a moment, she just stared at the screen, her heart swelling not with sorrow but gratitude. He wasn't asking to return, and she wasn't longing for him anymore. This was closure, raw, tender, and complete. The love that once broke her had now transformed into peace. She finally felt free. Her reply came naturally, without hesitation. "I am. And I hope you learn to be, too. No bitterness, no regret, just compassion." That night, Emily sat by her studio window as rain began to fall, tapping softly against the glass. The city lights reflected in her eyes, the same eyes that once held uncertainty but now shimmered with quiet strength. Around her were sketches, designs, pieces of a life she had rebuilt from her own courage. She wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. The woman who once measured love through someone else's eyes had learned to see it within herself. As thunder rumbled softly in the distance, Emily's gaze drifted to the small silver ring resting on the windowsill. It no longer symbolized a broken promise. It was a reminder of her journey of pain turned into purpose. She smiled faintly, realizing that love hadn't left her. It had simply changed form. It lived now in her art, her laughter, her strength. Her voice, gentle and sure, echoed in the closing moment. "We agreed to divorce after 2 years. But when he found out I loved him, he regretted it. And when I found out I could love myself, I finally let him go." The screen faded to white. Not an ending, but a beginning.